Aloha, my name is Rob Hack. I'm from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. We are a local nonprofit in Honolulu that's quasi offshoot of the U.S. Department of Commerce. And we are comprised of approximately 30 board members who volunteer their time to help Hawaii and Pacific Island companies export their products. We are all vetted by the U.S. Department of Commerce, and it's a board that comprises of professionals who have lots and lots of experience in various aspects of the exporting infrastructure. We are very fortunate to be able to put on this series of webinars and one-on-one trainings we do, and events such as Export Day that we'll have later in the year. We're fortunate in that we receive a grant from DBEDT, who in turn has received a grant from SBA in Washington, D.C., and we would like to thank them for that grant. This is our first event of the year. It's international trade shows, and I'll be the primary speaker, as will Jamie Lum from DBEDT. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie Lum to give a brief introduction to the HiSTEP program, and then I'll be back to talk about international trade shows. Jamie.
Aloha, everyone. And thank you for joining us in our first session for the HiSTEP Export Readiness program. Rob, can you see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, all right, great. Aloha, and I'm Jamie Lum with DBEDT. And Rob, thank you very much for your introduction and for introducing the program. So as Rob mentioned, this webinar that you are participating in is part of what we call the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program, or HiSTEP, which we did receive a grant. Okay, we do receive a grant, SBA, for this program. That's the primary source of funding to help support this. What is HiSTEP? Basically, it's an export development program to help our Hawaii companies to sell their Hawaii-made goods and services across the globe. And we do have a team of people that we work with, not only here at DBEDT, but as Rob mentioned, we work with several partners, including HPAC and a number of other federal agencies and state agencies and business organizations. You can see all of the logos we have there for all of the partners that we work with. This particular series of training sessions, we do work with HPAC to put this together. So these are the metrics that we are looking to achieve through the HiSTEP program. What we're looking at is to expand exports from Hawaii and the revenues that are generated not only by the companies, of course, but the the state revenues that we get and the jobs that are generated from all of the export activities that our Hawaii companies engage in. And then we also would like to see a larger number of companies within the state begin to export or continue to export. And then finally, we want to see a larger penetration of our global markets with Hawaii products and services. So to be eligible to be part of HiSTEP, these are the basic eligibility requirements. Is that you have to meet the federal definition of an eligible small business concern, meaning that you fit the definition of a small business within the SBA definition, which is actually any company that is under 500 employees. So there aren't that many companies probably in Hawaii that are exceed that. So most of our companies here would fit in that category. And then you have to certify the barred from receiving any federal funds. And then we also ask that companies and make sure that companies are registered to do business in the state with our Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and also are registered with the state tax department. The three components of the program, I'm not gonna go into detail, but all of this you can find on our website, which is invest.hawaii.gov. So our export readiness program, this webinar that you're sitting in right now is part of that training. What we're trying to do is get companies educated and basically, get the information that they need in order to know what exporting is about, what they're getting into, and also what are some of the market potentials, because we will have some topics later in the year on specific markets, exporting to a particular country. Also part of the export readiness is those partners that I mentioned in the beginning that we work with, like HPEC, like the Small Business Development Centers, like the Mink Center, and our Veterans Business Outreach Center. They help to provide business advising services. So we will match up companies with one of the partners when you register for HiSTEP. So that's all part of our export readiness. Our second component, we call it Go Global. And these are a series of different types of activities and events that will help companies find international buyers, distributors, etc. So this is trade shows, consumer shows, and thus that's why we have our session today to talk about doing international trade shows. And then finally, we have our company assistance component where companies can apply to us for financial assistance, which comes in the way if you're awarded. It's a reimbursement program, but it's basically to help companies carry out their own individual export plans. We actually have to say that our applications are closed for 2025. The deadline is in January, and we're going through an evaluation process right now. It is a competitive process and is evaluated by a committee. So again, we normally put that out. The applications come out in November and they're due in January. So we're currently closed for this year. But later this year, for those that maybe don't have an export plan or have one and maybe need to work on it, HPEC will be doing a session on writing an export plan. I highly recommend that when that comes up in the schedule. And that can help prepare you if you're looking at next year possibly for applying for the assistance. Because this is our international trade shows topic, I just wanted to show you what we have on the calendar for 2025. So these are the shows that we have that we're organizing. They're all trade shows with the exception of the Hankyu Hawaii Fair in July, which is a consumer show, which is different from what Rob will be talking about today. But some of the same things can apply. Just know that all of the others are trade shows. So if you're interested in our HiSTEP program, sorry.
Sorry, Jamie, your audio is coming in and out. That's okay. I have one quick point to make. If you could go back to the trade show list that you're doing, I'd like for the audience to see that list, because one of the things I'm going to talk about are the costs of getting involved in a trade show. And for the audience, please look at these trade shows where the state of Hawaii will have pavilions, and it's much more cost effective for you to get involved in these pavilions, particularly if you're just exploring a certain market and you're not yet quite sure if you're completely ready to dive into a market, getting involved in a pavilion is very, very helpful because it's subsidized. We had a question already, and I encourage everybody to type in their questions or raise their hands, and I will answer as we go along. This is a casual conversation, so please feel free to type in your questions. The first question is, will the presentations be available? And yes, both Jamie and my presentation will be available to everybody by email or via Dropbox link.
I'm sorry. We'll have this available for everyone. Can you hear me? Over the.
It's kind of muffled.
Yeah. We'll make this presentation available, and people can go to our website to get more information. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jamie. And because you have a lot of experience in trade shows, please feel free to chime in, and I may even ask you some questions along the way about the pavilions. Let me share my screen briefly. Jamie alluded to the DBEDT website.
Sorry. Yeah, we're evacuating the building, so
oh, no. I'm sorry to hear that. All right. Bye. Okay. Unfortunately, there's a glitch at DBEDT headquarters, so we'll just move on. And this is the DBEDT website that Jamie was talking about. It's at invest.hawaii.gov, and right here in the middle, you can see this exporting tab, and click on that, and it'll take you to what you need to know. Here, the Hawaii State Trade Expansion Program is the HiSTEP program is a national program where the various states get STEP funding from SBA. It's on a competitive basis, and Hawaii does very well and has excellent results in turning the STEP funds into exports and jobs in Hawaii, and it's rebranded locally as HiSTEP. And this is where you'll find all the information there. Here's the three components of HiSTEP that Jamie had mentioned. And what we're talking today about is really a combination of the three, but we're in the export readiness program where we do these webinars and trainings and one-on-one and company mentoring sessions. And Jamie mentioned the export plan activity. That'll be towards the end of the cycle, most likely in October of this year. And that's where I work with companies to help them develop in-depth export plans. Here is the YouTube archive of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. And so the video that we're doing right now, eventually in about a week after I edit it, it'll appear on here. We're coming up to 100 total videos, and I encourage you to go back and look through the archive and find topics of interest to you. There's things, country-specific activities such as exporting to Taiwan, exporting to Australia and New Zealand, more specific things such as exporting of agricultural products. This is Export University 101, is a very long webinar where we cover different modules, like a sort of like an exporting MBA class, where we'll have 45 minutes of finance, 45 minutes of logistics and legal and cultural issues and what have you. That's actually our next event in this cycle in March. So for the 2025 version of Export University, I encourage you to sign up for that. It'll start at 1 p.m. and I believe it's March the 6th. Anyway, I'd just like to point out this, there's hours and hours of export training at this archive. All right, now let me stop for a second and share my presentation. And again, please feel free to ask questions, and I'll stop at any time and answer the questions to the best of my ability. Okay, international trade shows. Again, my name is Rob Hack, and I'm from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. And one of the things I wanted to share with you, doing international business and spending a lot of time, most of my adult life outside of the US, and working hundreds of different trade shows, is that you need to start getting used to these QR codes. And I put one here on the right that you could scan it right now with your phone. All modern phones have it built into their camera, how to scan a QR code. And what this QR code will do if you scan it is take you immediately to this presentation on Dropbox, so that you have this presentation for you to look at anytime in the future. But get used to it, because you'll see them a lot internationally, particularly in Asia, where there'll be these QR codes on business cards and all over the place for you to scan. If you go to China, China is so dependent on the QR code now for making mobile payments or getting taxis or practically anything. I think the US started to get a little bit more exposed to it during the pandemic, when you might see these at a restaurant to scan the menu or what have you. But Asia in particular had been using QR codes for a very long time. But I think it's very important. It can be a great marketing tool, because you can build in to your own QR code such things as discounts on your website, or your business card, and have people just access your business card and your contact information very quickly. Okay, so why would you want to go to an international trade show? Well, obviously you get exposure to the new market that you're exploring, and there's a lot of learning to do when you're getting involved in a new market. You could meet potential and existing customers. That's obvious, but I think you'll be surprised if you go to your first or second international trade show that there'll be a lot of distributors who are interested in taking your product, reselling your product, or representing you in that market. When you're at an international trade show, it's a great opportunity, probably your best opportunity, to look at competition and find out what's going on with your competition, how they practice business, how they package their products, pricing, all of that stuff. And then it's, of course, a great opportunity to investigate the local business customs, such as pricing, packaging. In Japan, for example, business is very driven by the season. So there's spring sales, summer sales, autumn, etc. I think it's a very important practice to get into the market and look at how things are done this way. And there's really no better way to compact all of these activities into a week business trip other than going to an international trade show. I just took a quick image of one of the Hawaii pavilions. And if you attend one of my marketing lectures, you'll understand that I think Hawaii is in a fantastic position to have such wonderful words associated with the Hawaii brands, such as Aloha and Ohana. When people hear these words and they hear the word Hawaii, they hear the island names, Oahu, Kauai, Maui, etc. There's wonderful images that come to mind globally, and the state does a wonderful job of marketing that image around the world. And of course, there's TV shows and movies and all of that showing about life in Hawaii, but you're able to capitalize on all of that goodwill as a company going out into the world selling products and services from Hawaii. And I really encourage our companies to double down on the aloha-ness of their product, if there is such a word as aloha-ness. But That's a very important thing. And just being in the Hawaii Pavilion or letting companies and distributors and customers know that you're from Hawaii will be a magnet to your booth immediately. Okay, before the show, let's talk about this for a minute. I'm sorry there's a lot of words here, but we'll go through it quickly, and you'll be able to, as I said, go through this presentation later at your leisure. But let's say you're going to a trade show. They're usually 3 days, 2.5 days. Occasionally, there'll be a 4-day show, which is a long one. Once in a blue moon, there might be just a 1 or a 2-day activity. But let's say the average is 3 days. And what I see a lot of our companies doing is showing up the night before and then trying to leave the same night as the show ends. And I just think that that's a bad practice, because I really recommend that you get there early, at least a few days early, and then stay a few days longer. And the reason for that is getting there early allows you to get set up in your own brain and body, get over the jet lag, and make sure that you're energized for the show, as well as just being able to prepare. You have to set up the booth properly. There's always, and I say always in all caps, there's always some problems with the booth, whether it's the electricity or the signage or something's falling down, something got broken in the shipment. And getting there early allows you to take care of these things and get it set up so the booth looks good, and perhaps more importantly, you look good and you look fresh and ready and over your jet lag to do a 3 or 4 day show. Then stay longer, because you're going to meet people at the show that it could be very useful for you to go see them. It could be customers, it could be distributors, but it's nice to go visit them immediately after the show. And it shows your seriousness, and it also allows you to strike while the iron is hot, so to speak. So again, I spell out some things here. If you have the local distributors already, meet with them before the show to set a plan for the show. Same with your translators or translator if you only have one, so for example, if you have a pavilion with sponsored by DBEDT, there will be translators there that are provided for you, but you can meet with them ahead of time and practice their talk, teach them about your products, that sort of thing. You can get there early and stay late and take your customers or your distributors out to dinner, and just, get used to being in the market, practicing some local phrases and that sort of thing. I say contact all the stakeholders there to let them know about the show, let them know that you're coming. What is your booth number? Can you meet? Can we have lunch? Can we have a coffee? Invite people to come and see you there. Post it on your website, on your blog, in your email newsletters, social media, Instagram. Tell everybody what's going on. And I really suggest you do that, not the day before, but really plan it out and start posting about the show as much as 3 months ahead of time. And I found it very effective when I see people posting nightly recaps after the show. You'll be bone tired at the end of the night after the show, particularly if you go out to dinner with customers or distributors and you get back to the hotel at midnight, if you're lucky. And you use whatever energy you have left to post a nightly recap to your social media and tell everybody what a wonderful day it was, and try to remind people to come and see you on the 2nd and 3rd days of the event. When you're in a foreign market, you'll see throughout this presentation, when I talk about foreign market, I'm talking about anywhere. It could be Germany, it could be Brazil, it could be Zimbabwe. But as you're aware, most of our Hawaii companies, when they hear the word export, it jumbles around in their head and then they immediately think Japan. So I don't always agree with that. I think Japan can be a tough market, but nonetheless, that's what our Hawaii companies gravitate towards. And so that's what my presentation is largely aimed at. And also myself, I've spent a lot of my life in Japan, and I just have experience with that. Nonetheless, the lessons that we're talking about here can really be replicated for any market that you would contemplate going to. So I here, when I say use the acronym USCS, that's the U.S. Commercial Service. We have one fantastic U.S. Commercial Service officer in Honolulu. His name is John Holman. And by statute, he is the executive secretary of our Hawaii Pacific Export Council. And he's your window to all of the commercial service staff globally. And what he can do is help you meet the commercial service staff in Tokyo or Osaka or Berlin or London or Paris or Mexico City or Ottawa or Canada, wherever you want to go, he can help you meet those people, and they can be invaluable to you. And I strongly suggest you develop a network of the U.S. commercial service staff in the markets that you're thinking to operate in. So when you go to Tokyo, for example, if you were going to the Tokyo International Gift Show, I would strongly recommend trying to book some time with the commercial service staff in the embassy in Akasaka. And they're fantastic, and they can help you with all kinds of things. We'll later in the year be having a specific webinar on the topic of working with the U.S. commercial service and working with the American Chamber of Commerce in these various markets. So I'm not going to spend that much time with it here. Nonetheless, if you're planning to attend any trade shows in any market in the next several months, I would highly recommend contacting John Holman and having him help you meet some of the local commercial service officers in market. I also suggest looking into meeting with the American Chamber of Commerce in the market that you're thinking of going to. They, of course, are there 24/7, 365 working in that market, and they can shed some light on that market for you, teach you some things that can hopefully save you some time and energy and money, and learn from the mistakes that people have made before you. I also find before the show starts, locate the on-site show management, get to know those people, have a good relationship with them, because if you like the show and you decide you'd like to attend next year, they can help you get the good booth space. And can just basically make things go easier for you at the show, because as I said, the show, no matter how well you plan, nothing goes perfectly at a trade show, and it's nice to have some support behind you, excuse me, in the form of the on-site show management. You might need to print some things. It's good to know where the printers are at these events, if there's a supply store, a 7-Eleven or Family Mart or something like that. And then, of course, we'll all have a little jet lag, and it's wonderful to know where the coffee is, and of course, where the restrooms are, and if there's any place to have lunch and get snacks and drinks and that sort of thing. Also, before the show, it's very important to look at your budget. And I'm going to point you over to the right of the screen and say that to get into even the least expensive trade show on your own, you're going to spend at a minimum $10,000. And the booth space can be very, very expensive, particularly international shows. Or if you were going to a show in New York, Miami, San Francisco, those can be very expensive as well. But if you're going to Tokyo, London, Singapore, Abu Dhabi, the booth space is incredibly expensive, right? And so you have to figure, every show is a little bit different, but what do you get with the fee to have the booth space. Sometimes it's a mandatory package deal where you get the space itself and you get some lights and you get the carpet that goes down on the floor, one or two pieces of furniture like a chair and a small desk, and that's about it. But there's usually different packages depending on what you need. If you need, for example, to rent a large screen TV to make presentations while you're in the booth or what have you, it's all sort of available at these shows. Of course, you could hire somebody to make a custom booth for you locally, and then you're starting to get into the many tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I don't think that that's what most of our companies in Hawaii are looking for. We're looking to rent a small booth and get in there and take a lot of our own posters and that sort of thing. But these are all things that you have to think about for the budget, because as you start to add these up, you're quickly going to get to $10,000 and beyond. So do you take samples with you to give away or let people touch, or however that works? I was going to say also let people taste, but if you're taking those kinds of food products or whatever, you're crossing into a different world where you may need you'll definitely have some customs problems getting your product into that market. So it's not often easy to deal with food and drinks if that is your product at an international trade show. It's not impossible, but it's a lot more work. So the swag, if you have pens or little giveaways, what have you, I always like to have some candy, some mints or something. But it would be nice to have some Hawaii kind of candy at the front of your booth, and that always brings people over to grab a candy, and you can say hi and start up a conversation that way. You'll need business cards. You'll need lots of business cards, particularly in Asia and the Middle East to a certain extent. Europe, not so much. And as you know, in the US, we don't trade business cards as much as we used to, but certainly Japan, Korea, Taiwan, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, they'll all use a lot of business cards. And in a show, you'll need at least a box of 250. I'd suggest taking 500. Collateral here means marketing, communication, brochures, things that you're going to print out and hand out to customers, or things that they can pick up on their own at the booth. I would recommend, though, looking at getting the anything you print done on A4 sized paper, not 8.5 by 11-inch standard letter paper that is common in the US, because once you get outside of the US, that letter size paper is not used whatsoever, and the international standard is A4. And the reason I say to try to get it printed on A4 is because if you're giving them the US standard letter size paper and they take it and try to put it into their file system, manila folder or what have you in Japan, it doesn't fit. And so what they wind up doing is just throwing it away. And it was a waste of your time and money to even print it. So do you have to ship anything to the show? That can be very expensive depending on the weight and size, obviously, of what you're shipping. And then, as I said earlier, particularly with drinks and food, if there's any customs or taxes on the inbound shipment, that needs to all be put into your budget. And then, of course, your travel. How many staff are going? Of course, you've got to pay them. But however many staff are going with you, you have to multiply the airfare times that amount of staff, the hotel rooms, the meals, the Ubers, and all of that stuff. So if it's just you and going to Tokyo, you're looking at $1,000 if you plan well enough in advance for airfare. Hotels are 100, 120 for a small hotel. Meals, what those ramen and that kind of stuff is relatively inexpensive in Japan now. Transportation, meaning the Ubers, the taxis, the subways, the trains, If you needed to rent a car to visit customers or distributors outside of the cities that wherever your trade show is, that certainly costs money. Taking luggage, I made a separate luggage item here rather than shipment under the booth space, because if you have the type of airplane ticket where you need to take luggage, or you have extra luggage for the stuff that you're going to give away at the booth, or your samples or what have you, you have to budget that. And internationally, that's at least $100 a suitcase, but more likely 150 or 200. And if you need a visa to get into the country, Japan, you don't as a US citizen. Korea, you don't, but China, you do. And there's a fee associated with all of that. Not incredibly expensive, but nonetheless, you need to think about it. And then, do you need mobile data while you're there? At your booth, do you need a computer to show customers anything? A secondary screen to show people anything. So those all have a cost associated with them. And of course, you might have your own personal travel preferences where you need this or you need that, and you need to think about that. But as I said at the beginning of this slide, when you add up all of these different items, it's almost impossible to come out under $10,000, right? And I would suggest it's probably more like 15 at a minimum for a decent sized show. So again, a lot more words here, but let's just go through it slowly. A few of the items here I've already talked about, but if you have a customer relationship management software such as Salesforce or Zoho, Insightly, there's many of them. I hope that you have something like this to track your customers, even if it's an Excel spreadsheet where you're just tracking the names of your customers and when you last talked to them and what have you. Get that database ready to accept lots of new names that you're going to input when you come back. And then does your database need to be able to have not only the Romaji or Roman characters for names and addresses, what have you, or do you need the kanji characters and Chinese characters in the database to have their customers and distributors' names and addresses there? If you do feel you need that, then your database needs to be set up appropriately. Develop a plan for collecting business cards and scanning in the cards to your CRM system, or getting them into your Excel spreadsheet, or however you're tracking that. A lot of trade shows you go to nowadays have a scanner where you can scan the QR codes on the visitors' badges. And I think that can be very useful. It can also be very expensive if you use the app and the device that's provided by the show. So a lot of times you can use your own phone and scan, as I had shown you on the very first slide of the presentation, the QR code. And that can be very helpful. But nonetheless, plan this out and practice it before you actually get to the show, so you're not trying to figure out how to do all of these things while you're at the show. I mentioned already the business cards. And I would suggest making a QR code and printing that QR code on your business card so that others can scan your business card and just get your contact information into their database. And their database and your database could simply be your iPhone and what's in your contacts there. But there's free iPhone and Android apps that will allow you to create QR codes that include your name and email address and company name and website and all of that. And I strongly recommend that. So do you need power at the booth? Many countries outside of the US are 240 volt, 220 volt AC. And depending on some of your electronics that you may take with you, you plug them in and you can burn them out immediately if they're not ready for that, if they're just set up for the US market only. So check that out and make sure that your electronics and the cabling that you take with it can accommodate it, and make sure you have the correct plugs. If you're going to Japan, you can generally get away with the standard US plug, except we have the 2 flat pins and a round third one on the bottom for grounding, whereas Japan just has the 2 flat pins. So if your device, like your computer, for example, has the 2 flat pins and the bottom round third one, you won't be able to plug it into a Japanese wall because the Japanese wall can't accept that third round ground pin. So you need an adapter for that. It's not hard to find, but it's harder to find there. So get on eBay or Amazon and order all of that stuff before you go. If you go into continental Europe, those are just 2 round plugs, which are the same as Korea. Taiwan is the same as Japan, and well, primarily the US. And then the UK is its own thing, 3 huge pins. And Australia is different, and China generally follows the UK, believe it or not. So anyway, do some research on that before you're going to the trade show. So you'll need to make sure your electronics and your adapters are good, not just for the booth, but for your hotel room, for your razors or hair dryers or whatever you're bringing, your computers and iPads and charging and whatnot. Okay, so the standard booth in the United States is 10 by 10, 10 feet by 10 feet. And as you get outside of the US, you'll find that the standard booth is roughly 3.3 meters, which is approximately 10 feet, but it doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's just 3 meters, and that's more like 9 feet or a little more than 9 feet. So I strongly recommend trying to figure out and learn exactly what are your booth dimensions, because that'll impact the amount of posters you can fit on there, on the walls and what have you. And I mentioned this earlier, but it's important to understand is the lighting and carpet included in your booth space. The other thing I strongly recommend is just getting used to the metric system, because if you go to, say, the Tokyo International Gift Show and you're asking somebody for help and you tell them I need something that's 3 inches, or so I need 6 inches of tape, or I need a power cable that's 6 feet long, they have no idea what you're talking about. And so it's just better to get used to the metric system as best you can. We already talked about the 8.5, 11-inch paper compared to A4, so I won't get into that. It could be that it could be very good for you to get a SIM card at the airport, so you have cheaper data than if you use the roaming data plan. I've tended to use over the years T-Mobile, the Magenta plan, for many years, and I found that one to be the best one for traveling internationally, because they don't charge you anything extra for traveling internationally with that. AT&T, Verizon, and others have a different plan, and you can add, like, I think it's $5 to $10 per day with those 2 companies to be able to use some data in a foreign country. But it can also be good to just get a SIM card at the airport and use the local data rates and data plan. And you probably get faster, more reliable data anyway than by using T-Mobile or Verizon or what have you. And then, of course, make a plan with your staff and your partners and distributors, your translators. Everybody's going to be using the booth. Make a booth plan and a schedule, and build in some downtime for yourself. Everybody needs restroom breaks, coffee breaks, and what have you. But make a plan for that on a schedule, and it'll be a lot easier on you. Many products from Hawaii we see going to these international trade shows require testing if you're going to use them for samples at the booth. And that could be skin creams and lotions and sunscreens, but certainly food products, even cookies and that sort of thing, drinks, obviously alcohol. So know that before you go. Do research many months in advance of the show to figure out if you're going to fall into that category where you're going to have the products tested to be allowed into the market. I also recommend that when you get to the airport there'll be ATMs, and get a couple $100 in cash with your credit card or your debit card from your bank. You'll get the best rate, the exchange rate, if you do it that way rather than going up to the money changers and giving them a couple $100 bills, and they'll give you back the local currency, but they'll also take a commission and have some markup there. I certainly do that all the time. I change cash that way, but I've just found it's much better to you get a much better rate with the ATMs. I would also strongly recommend telling your bank or your credit card company that you are going on this trip, because if you show up in Tokyo, for example, and use the ATM at Haneda or Narita airports, and it could automatically flag your card as having been stolen, and they'll just turn off your card, and then you can't use it for the rest of the trip because they'll tell you that they need to send you a new card. And this comes from personal experience, so please do that. If you know that you'll have some translators or other assistants at the show, I think it's very nice and helpful to bring them a small gift from Hawaii. They would love that, and it helps develop a relationship with them. Find out ahead of time what are the hours for the booth setup, and then get there as early as you can to set up, because as I mentioned before, there's always problems, and I should put this in all caps, that always, because it's guaranteed. No matter how much planning you do, something will be always a little bit off. Get a show directory. That there's almost always a directory and a map, and find your competitors if you know who they are. Find any customers and on the map, and then build time to go look for them. And I use a rule of thumb that at least a quarter of your total time at the show you should use for walking the floor and learning and looking for your competitors and looking at potentially your customers or distributors might have their own booth, but you can really see how things are done in the market. I think it's really important to study how other people are packaging their products or presenting their products, and just generally marketing their wares. Make sure to pack supplies that you might need after the show to pack up your booth and all of your stuff. It could be tape, it could be duct tape, whatever is needed to sort of pack things back up and ship it, or do whatever you need to do with it. But it's harder to find it there than it is to just take what you need from home. Okay, this is a very simple booth. I just stole this picture because I like the layout of it. It's a 10 by 10 booth, and there's a couple points here that I'd like to make. That there's obviously a screen here, so they needed power. They have lighting from above. The organizing company behind the show included this carpeting. You get one little desk, a desk here, this high top table, 2 plants. You'll be surprised what the trade show company will charge you to have these plants in the booth. And then what I also like are these higher type of stools. The older, let's say when I was young and going to trade shows, they were almost always just little chairs or stools that you'd sit on. And it's quite awkward, I think, to be sitting at a booth. But with these taller ones, you can kind of lean on them and easily stand up if you see somebody coming into the booth and talk to them, rather than sitting in a regular chair and then having to stand up and what have you. I just find that these higher style chairs are really nice to have at a trade show booth. So here's what we do during the show. I think it's very important to get to know your neighbors, whoever's in the booth next to you. It could be you're in a middle booth, so you could have neighbors at both sides. And if you're there by yourself at the booth, the neighbors can cover for you if you have to run to the restroom or go get a coffee or a drink of something. Or you just want to walk the floor for 15 or 20 minutes, your neighbors can cover for you and you can cover for them. And it's a very nice way just to make some friends and get to know your neighbors there. I said earlier, having some candy or mints in a bowl is always a great bait to get people to come up to the booth, so you can reel them in and try to get them to look at your products and the things that you're trying to sell there. It's great to have a bowl for collecting the business cards that you'll collect from people. Of course, swag, such as pens, a decent quality pen, or whatever is useful in your particular line of work. Some samples, if you can. We talked about the brochures. Posters, of course, are probably the most important thing to get up onto the wall. You'll always need power strip or two and good extension cords, and make sure the extension cords can handle that 240 volts. As I said earlier, or you'll burn them up and melt them. Some double-sided tape, double-sided Velcro, scissors, a little multi-tool like a Leatherman or something like that. But again, a lot of the countries you're going to have very strict knife laws, so just make sure your multi-tool and what have you is not some enormous thing. It can be very helpful to have an extra battery to charge your phone while you're at the booth, because when you think about it, if the show starts at 9 o'clock in the morning and goes till 5 p.m., you'll probably leave your hotel at 7:30, and after 5 you might go out to dinner with your customers or your booth neighbors or what have you, and you may not get back to your hotel till 9-10 p.m. or so, and that's a long day to be using your phone, and it's very helpful to have a charger, extra battery, and a cable on you. So depending on your product and the way you like to sell things, do you need a laptop? Do you need an extra display screen? How do you want your tables and chairs and plants, as I just showed you from the previous slide? What's included in your booth package? What's included in the pavilion that you might attend with the state of Hawaii? So just figure out what all that is, and it's valuable real estate, and you need to make sure that you have enough space for what you're trying to display for people. We talked about social media. I think it's great to make a few social media posts during the show, but definitely at night when you get back and recap how the show went and talk about how positively how you're looking forward to the next day of the show. So you'll find at a lot of booths on the front table. Let me go back here. On the front table, people will put a little business card holder there, so you can passersby can just pick up the business cards. But I don't like that. I would rather hand people the business cards and get their business card, and not just be so passive about it that they should come by and pick up your card and sort of hope that they call you later. Excuse me. So the booth etiquette, I mean, some of this is obvious, and I apologize for restating the obvious, but I go to so many shows and I've trained so many different marketing people over the years that I still see people doing some very strange things at the trade show booth. So it's obvious you're there to sell things. And so you should appear friendly and smiling and inviting. That works everywhere. around the world. Don't block the entrances to the booth, standing around so that people can't see your products or your key posters or what have you. Stand back a little bit into the booth. Most booths or trade shows these days don't let you stand out in the walkways and sort of entice people to come in or sort of tout them to come in. You have to stay in your booth and stay a little bit to the back and try to make eye contact and get people to come into the booth that way. Stand as much as possible. I know it's difficult for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, particularly the ladies if they're wearing heels. And what I don't recommend doing that, wearing heels, but I know some absolutely want to. So, but I do recommend getting some comfortable shoes. And the shoes that you can wear and stand on and walk around, for 10, 12, or even 14 hours a day. But as I said, stand as much as you can. There's always, at every trade show, I do it myself. There's the gravity works on you and you want to sit down. And so that's where I'll go back to this. These higher chairs, I think, are really the way to go for that. Dress appropriately and professionally. From Hawaii, we'll tend to want to have some aloha wear, and most of the time that's quite acceptable. And as I said earlier, we're trying to maximize our Hawaii-ness. And so having nice aloha wear is great, but it should be looking good. Remember, you're selling your company's products and services and yourself, so it's important to look good. Try not to stand around using your mobile phone. That's very difficult in the modern world, as we have our email and we check the weather, we're checking train times and every possible thing on our phones. But while your eyes are down on your phone, your eyes are not out on the passers-by and trying to make eye contact with them and bring them into the booth. We can talk about this during the Export University, where we have a cultural issues module about, we'll get into business card exchanging and what have you. And there's plenty of YouTube videos you can look at in this regard. But if you're going to spend a lot of time in Japan, Korea, where there's still quite a business card formality there and exchanging business cards, try to learn how to do it properly. It's not difficult at all. And if you're not sure how to pronounce somebody's name, ask them, and they like to tell you how to properly pronounce their name. Invite visitors into the booth when you can, and ask them questions about their business and what do they do and how could they use your products. And if you have a little table and some chairs, sit down and have some bottled water ready to share with them. Or as you get more advanced in the trade shows, you can have bring some green tea, bottled green tea from 7-Eleven or what have you, and just have it ready with some little paper cups to share with the guests that come in. Okay, here's an example of everybody looking at their phone. This is a photo I stole off the internet, but it reminds me of a lot of the trade show booths that I walk past these days. Now, I just walking past, of course, I understand they're checking things and whatever, but it's not they look busy and it's not a booth that I would want to walk into, right? Even if the product look interesting, because I feel like I'm interrupting them somehow. After the show, follow up quickly. I mean, that really sums it up, but send thoughtful messages to the people who came by the booth. You'll be able to take all of the business cards that you've collected or scanned and sort out, okay, these are tier 1 customers. These are people who are really interested and I can see selling products to them. Tier 2 might be people that you have to follow up with, and it might take some months or even a couple of years before you sell them anything. And then tier 3 are people who are very unlikely and may have just been tire kickers, and they're not really interested in buying anything from you. So you can kind of weed them out quickly. But tier one, you want to reply to them very quickly. Even that night of the show that you met them, you can send them a message that it was nice to meet them. Thank you for coming by the booth. And if there's anything I can provide for you, please let me know. I think sending people PDFs is great. PDFs are quite an international format, rather than PowerPoint files or Excel files or Word documents or whatever. And they transport easily by email or even by iMessage or WhatsApp or what have you. So have your documents ready in PDF format. Get all these contacts you've made into your customer resource management software as quickly as you can, and try to be as accurate as you can. It's an internationally well-known fact that people wait way too long to get those business cards scanned in and follow up with the people who came by the booth. We all do it. It's a marketing problem, but the sooner you can do it, the better. And by soon, I mean that day, and anything after the day is too long, in my opinion. A lot of shows will provide you with a registered attendee list, and that can be extremely helpful too. It just depends. Tokyo International Gift Show might have, I don't know, Jamie would know better than I do now, but they might have 100,000 people actually visiting that show. So are you going to reach out to 100,000 people? Very unlikely. But there are some smaller shows that you will attend in your international trade show world, and there may only be a few hundred or a few thousand attendees, and those lists are easily manageable, and you can get them into your customer resource management software. I'd like to see you sending an email a month after the show to everybody that you found, and talk about your plans for any upcoming shows, how to order products from you, the distributor contact information in the local market, and trying to get them addicted to your social media posts. I really like quarterly newsletters. Sending out, even to say a lot of your customers are in Japanese. I would love it if you could do the newsletter in Japanese, but that's not always easy. But English is fine. If you have a good relationship, and we'll talk about all of these things if you join one of my marketing lectures, but if you're really focused on your target market segment, then a quarterly newsletter is not at all intrusive to them. They will look forward to reading what's new with you and your products and what's coming in the months and years ahead. Weekly touches by social media can be very helpful, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or X, or in Japan it's Line, or whatever your preferred platform is. Getting something out there weekly is very helpful. And as I tell our companies in Hawaii, I think about 10% at the beginning, if you can do 10% of your social media posts in the target market language that you're working in, that's extremely helpful. And as I said earlier, when you get to when you're planning to go to the show, try to arrive a few days early and try to stay a few days late. And one of the reasons is I always feel when I go to a trade show that I meet something that's very hot, a lead that is really ready to move forward on something and continue the discussion onward. And if you're able to do that a day after the show and go meet these people and maybe even see their facility, see their store that they would be selling your products in, I think that that's really, really helpful. And that often closes a lot of deals just like that, rather than trying to sprint to Haneda Airport immediately after the show and get back to Hawaii. It can be really advantageous to you to stay a few days longer. if you think you're going to come back to the show, go back, talk to the show organizer that you met at the very beginning before the show started, and work out a plan to come back and find the booth space that you prefer. Usually you have to put down some money deposit to get the space you want, but if you really enjoyed the show and you thought it was useful, I think that it's very worth it. If you found the translators that you were using to be very helpful and useful to you, then certainly maintain their contact information and keep in touch with them during the year before the next show, so that they remember you and they're happy to see you the next time, and you can develop a longer term relationship with them. It helps them learn your products more and learn about you, etc. Samples and brochures rather than swag, any of that sort of stuff. If you have a local distributor, just leave it with them so that you don't have to take it back to Hawaii or ship it back to Hawaii. It's just wasted money. So if you planned it properly, you probably won't have that much left over, but they can always use a little bit of stuff to pass out to customers as they go out and meet them while you're in Hawaii. If you do have to send things back to Hawaii, there can often be paperwork involved with that, customs declarations for FedEx or UPS or whoever you're going to use, Neko or Yamada, any Nippon Express, any of them will have you do some customs declarations, and the sooner you can get those done, the better it is. And you can even get those done before the show if you work with that shipping company. And then meet with your distributor if you have one, and talk about who's going to do what, who's going to follow up with which customer, whether that should be you, whether it should be them, and then what are the action items for dealing with those customers. And then talk about the show and just have a debrief. What went well, what didn't go so well, what could we improve on for next year, what should we double down on, what should we retreat from, that sort of thing. I think it's very important to do these things while the show is fresh in your mind, rather than waiting a month or 3 months or 6 months later, because what you'll wind up doing is just repeating exactly what you just did the previous show as you get farther away from it and you don't remember all of these things. And as I said at the very beginning, again, stay longer. And this is a good opportunity to go out and get into the local markets, the street markets, the big areas of shopping around the city that you're in, the department stores, and see how the local culture likes their products packaged, the colors that they use, the types of materials that are on the packaging. All of that, I think, is extremely important. And you can learn an incredible amount just by walking around for half a day in the main commercial areas of these cities and going into stores and what have you. So that's it for me. And here again, you can scan this QR code and get this presentation right now if you'd like. Here's my mobile number, my email address at HawaiiExportSupport.com. Let me back out of here and see if there's any questions or comments. Okay, great. I'll assume there's no question or comment. And with that, what I'll do, as I said, is edit this video and post it on our YouTube channel. It takes me about a week to get all of that done. And then I'll send a email notification to all of the registered people who attended, and there'll be a link back to this presentation as well as Jamie's HiSTEP presentation. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much on behalf of the Hawaii Pacific Export Council. Again, my name is Rob Hack, and you can look at invest.hawaii.gov for the upcoming events. We just only have Export University as a firm schedule right now for March the 6th, but we do have some very exciting webinars planned for this year. So please keep in touch with us through invest.hawaii.gov, and then the Hawaii Pacific Export Council website is also hawaiiexportsupport.com. So with that, I'd like to thank Jamie Lum again. And again, my name is Rob Hack from the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, and I look forward to helping you this year with your exporting plans. Mahalo.